Welcome to Below the Line with Dr. Bennie L. Harris. The Chancellor of the University of South Carolina Upstate talks with top leaders about issues such as change, technology, education, and leadership. Please enjoy.
Welcome to Below the Line. Below the Line is a monthly question and answering column that I have been fortunate to interview with key leaders, amazing leaders all across the Southeast, particularly that some are at Fortune 50 companies and many of our local leaders as well in the upstate of South Carolina. And today I am here with Traci Newkirk. Traci is the president of Intellectual Capital. It's a staffing, recruiting, and talent strategy company. This is very appropriate for this conversation. Now, Traci does not come to this conversation just through her professional capacity, but also Traci and I serve on the Greenville Chamber Board together. And I am amazed and excited all the time when Traci adds value to the board whenever she speaks, kind of like E.F. Hutton. When E.F. Hutton speaks, people listen. When Traci speaks, folks listen. Welcome, Traci.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Dr. Harris.
Thank you. So I've prepared a series of questions. Well, my staff has helped me with a series of questions for you, and I've shared those questions with you. We may deviate a little bit from those questions, but that won't be any surprise. I will kind of follow your lead in that deviation. But the first question I have, Traci, is tell me about yourself. Tell me about your background, and then we'll go into some of the questions around your company, Intellectual Capital.
Sounds good. Gosh, that's always a hard question of where to start, right? I'll give you the short version in that my husband and I have started 5 different businesses over the course of our marriage. We've been married 35 years, which is exciting, and owned a business for most of those, right? And so that's just a little bit about me. I love starting businesses. I love building something, but I love building people probably more than just business.
Did you grow up in the upstate?
I did. Yeah, went to Riverside High School, went to Winthrop.
Okay,
Yeah.
excellent. Did you always know that you were going to be a leader?
Ever since I was young, my mother called it bossy. I think there are other terms I would have loved for her to call it, but yes, oldest daughter, built in.
So you and your husband, Barry is his name, launched ICAP, Intellectual Capital, in 2003 out of your basement with little more than grit, determination, and complementary strengths. Can you share how that humble beginning shaped your leadership and how the company grew?
Yes. I would say that it was business number 4 for us to start. So we had a little bit of experience with the School of Hard Knocks. We kind of learned what not to do and let that inform us in the future. We actually had some angel investors that invested in us for about 18 months, and we were able to pay them off, which was really good. So we learned how to work with other people.
Good.
We learned how to work with each other. We fumbled through that a little bit because each of us at times overtook the other and tried to speak for the other and tried to stick our hand in what we weren't really gifted to do.
Okay.
But once we got into our lanes and he trusted me and I trusted him, I think that's when the business took off.
And that's pretty powerful. You got a lot of things that I'm sure we can learn from when husband and wife working in the same business together, both having probably an entrepreneur spirit, learning those lanes and learning how to trust in the business space is different than learning how to trust in the marriage space. But I see that you also earn a BA in communication and a master's in organizational leadership. And along the way, you had a number of different certificates. And at USC Upstate, we talk about the value of credentials and certificates as well, particularly stackable certificate. So how have your studies and certifications influenced your approach to building culture and leading the company?
Well, let's talk with certificates first of all. I just feel like certificates give you a certain leg up when you don't have a lot of time, right? So you can go invest a week or 2 weeks or 4 months in a certificate, and it kind of gives you a broad sense of an experience in a certain subject.
Okay.
That really launched our business number 5 is just that first certificate. Since then, it's been 9 more, right?
Okay.
But I really believe that certificates are a quick way to get ahead in something in a deep way for people.
Excellent. Well, that's what we've come to recognize. I know in Greenville, the county is looking to increase the number of high level credentials and certificates, because in industry, you may not need a degree every time you need to pivot and learn something new or different. But those high-level credentials are things that you can meet with some of the changing environments, all of those types of things.
Absolutely.
I read that your leadership quote from Maya Angelou, where people will forget what you said, but people would never forget how you make them feel. And that resonated deeply. How do you intentionally weave that into your day-to-day culture and your company's day-to-day culture?
I think dignity. People deserve and desire it. And so I want to teach our employees and remind myself too that I don't have to be the smartest person in the room, but I do need to treat people with dignity, all people. And when I mean all people, I don't mean just employees, but I mean vendors, consultants, customers. I want to be out to lunch somewhere and with my fellow team members and treat the waitress staff with dignity as well. So I really believe that I don't have to be the smartest person, but I do need to treat everyone with dignity.
Can you recall an example of where that became full circle, or where you remember that how you treated that person and that person's appreciation for that treatment? Can you recall
Absolutely.
an example around that?
COVID.
Okay.
We made a decision, Barry and I. Now, we were scared, mind you, right? It was a scary time. But during that kind of two or 3 weeks when we all went home around in March 2020, we made a decision that we were not going to let any of our employees go no matter what.
Okay.
And so we decided that the worst thing that we could do is lay someone off in the middle of a pandemic and out of dignity. What's interesting is that it has made people so loyal to us. Because during that time, we cut expenses, we cut back, we made other changes, but no one lost their job during that time period.
And that's amazing. I think people were extremely vulnerable. They were afraid. They were lonely because of all the isolation they experienced with COVID. But the insecurity of losing your job is pretty strong.
Especially when you can't interview.
When you can't interview.
You can't even go in for an interview at that time. So I felt like it would cause people to feel hopeless. And that was part of us giving dignity and value to all people. There were other ways for our company, not saying this was everybody, but for our company, there were other ways.
Great. At CAP, you have guided women and veteran-owned businesses through nearly 2 decades of growth. What's one leadership principle will you consciously lean into as president when things get challenging?
I think to know your values and stick to them.
Okay. Tell me more about that.
Well, first, you've got to define what you value. And I think that takes some self-reflection. I think thinking about your thinking is kind of the hard work, right? But knowing your values and then naming them and then living them out intentionally, I believe is something that through those hardships has served us well in that area.
You said thinking about your thinking. I was working with someone about 6 years ago, and he talked about metacognition, or think about thinking, which is a mark of great leaders, to be able to think about how do you think about something. I never thought about that as a characteristic as well, and you just mentioned it, kind of drew that to me. So you have emphasized hiring for diversity of thought, so you could focus on your strengths. Can you talk about a time when that strategy led to surprising results for your team or for your business, these diversity of thoughts?
Yeah. Well, let me just talk about the science around Strength Finders, which was, by the way, one of my first certifications. There are 34 words that make people successful in business. 34 words. We all embody maybe 5 of those words as individuals, which means that we need to rely on other people who have those other talents. And so it just became ingrained in me since about 2014, the importance of a variety of different ways of your thought, of diversity of thought, diversity of generation, diversity of gender, diversity of race, diversity of religious experience, background experience. Let's see, last August, we needed to make a hire, and we decided that the hire that we needed to make needed to be diverse, and it needed to be a different generation, and it needed to be somebody not in staffing.
Okay.
We wanted a fresh perspective. We wanted someone 40s and under who could help us build systems, would help us transition to a new generation.
Yeah.
And so we intentionally look for that person, and she's brought that in for us.
Excellent. You know, I have a friend of mine. She and I were in leadership Nashville together. Her name is Carol Hodel, and Carol was the editor of the Nashvillian, and so she presented to my class. I was teaching this class, Servant Leadership at Lipscomb University, and she talked about every business leader should have a young mentor. She said she has a niece who's her mentor, and she said if the newspaper industry had leaned into that a long time ago, it wouldn't have gotten behind in terms of how media and how news would be experienced. That people wouldn't necessarily experience news from just paper; they would experience news from their cell phone. And so she said that all of us need to have that diversity of generation, as you just talked about, to help us to anticipate what our future may or may be, not be, and many industries can benefit from that.
I agree. I think there's one thing to invite a person in, but you have to be ready for what they might share with you. And I believe that's important as well. We had to get ready for a different thought.
Yeah.
For a different generation, and be willing to listen to what she had to say.
So how did you get to that point? I guess I can assume that being an HR professional, you appreciate people, number one.
Absolutely.
And you appreciate the value of people. But not every leader, not every business appreciate what this next generation brings to the conversation. How did you get to that point where it became one of your values?
We invested in a course called EOS, which is Entrepreneur Operating System. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but it is a system that builds your meeting schedule where you do something called IDS, which is Identify, Discuss, and Solve.
Okay.
And so I learned a system, and then the system prepared me for what the generation might bring in, which was, are you working on the right problem? Are all voices in the room able to share?
Okay.
That's the D, right? Making sure everyone around the table has shared. I try to use that at the chamber too. You'll notice that. I'm like, Dr. Harris, would you like to speak, right? Because all voices need to be heard if they're in the room.
So there has to be an intentionality.
Absolutely. And a system.
And a system to do that.
Yeah.
Okay. And is that something you can teach people how to?
I believe
leaders?
So. I believe.
Participate in a system like that?
I think first they have to believe that they're not the smartest people in the room.
Okay.
And second, they have to build a system to be able to hear other people and just to be curious by nature.
Okay, great. Starting a company with no capital and later pivoting through tough periods like the pandemic must have tested your resolve. How do you face those big challenges, and what mindset helped you get through it?
I believe that past challenges give you a roadmap to how to handle future challenges.
Okay.
And so I'll give some context if that's okay.
Yes.
I think that 2008 to 2010 was worse than COVID for us. Okay. We lost 75% of our business. We had to almost completely start over.
Yep.
And so we put in some strategies that if this ever happened again, we would be better prepared for that. So I think COVID came, and while it was scary and hard, we had some strategies in place from 2008 that we had learned.
You know, I appreciate that. How do you help leaders remember? Because we go through these periods of time, and it's like a check in the box. We did it, we move on. So how do you help us remember what we went through before?
Well, I ask
how to leverage that.
I think if I do any executive coaching or working with teams, I'll say, when have you done this successfully?
Okay.
In the past? They have.
Yeah.
Most likely they have. You know, we're all kind of being prepared in our leadership.
Right.
None of us have it just this easy, straight road, right? Mm-hmm. It's curvy and bumpy at times. And so if we can create space and ask the right questions and remind people that you've done it before, what did you learn?
Right.
And how can you take that learning into this next experience?
You know, in this HR space that you're in, that you lead in, USC Upstate, we're hosting our third annual Talent Gap forum, our forum,
Nice.
where we pull together industries and all different type of industry, educational, post-secondary, secondary education, manufacturing, all different type of industry to talk about the talent gap.
Yeah.
One Spartanburg chamber did a talent gap analysis. We leveraged that talent gap to say to industry, where are your talents and how do we pull them together? So in staffing and recruiting, talent gaps can be tough. You mentioned working to guide the next generation toward pathways like certification. What's one success story you've seen come from that kind of investment?
I've got a couple. One is I had an intern that I saw some potential in and sent her for a certification. She already had an HR degree from Clemson,
Okay.
but I sent her for an additional certification. And then later on, she got hired away from me to go and work in that certification.
Okay.
So I think as business owners, we have to educate people, train people like they're going to stay, and bless and release people when they go.
Okay. So do you worry about when people go?
I used
Some
to.
leaders don't want people to go.
I used to,
Okay.
but you can't. And not if you care about people and want them to experience dignity. You have to bless and release. I really, and I had to unwind myself from that. I'm sitting here. This is a lot of therapy I've been through to be able to say that. Okay, but I do feel like when you train them, you want to train them like they're going to stay.
Yeah.
But you want to also know that the biggest compliment you could get is for someone to come in and recruit away your talent.
Now, how do you think about talent leaving and then talent coming back? That same talent that you value, and they got recruited away, and then they decide that, you know what, I like the culture over there. I would love to come back. How do you feel about that?
I think we all change and we all grow up and we all realize that the grass isn't always greener.
Yeah.
And so send them away and bless and release, and then welcome them back if they've learned something new and they can come back and make your organization better.
I've heard some leaders have a challenge with people coming back, and I always find that pretty interesting and difficult. I think it's an excellent affirmation for the environment that was created, and they realize that I have a good thing over here, and I would love to come back and be a part of that.
I will. I will say one of our other probably values is that we want to be invited to people's retirement parties. And, it matters how you treat people when they leave.
Right.
And sometimes that's the impetus to make them want to return, is how you treated them when they left.
Exactly. So ICAP has scaled substantially, from interns to thriving teams with long tenured placements. What's one operational or cultural move that you've made early on that laid the foundation for lasting relationships? It's kind of continued the conversation we're having.
Yeah, I think it's trusted advisor, I would say, is not everything that we do is to make money as business owners. And if you see every opportunity as a money-making opportunity, I think your actions are seen as transactional rather than a trusted advisor. And so it's shifting your mindset about, hey, do I want to know this person at their retirement, or do I just care about what they can do for me right now?
That's a very good point. You found human potential advisors to focus on cultural development and leadership. How did that passion emerge from your experience at ICAP, and how do the two ventures feed into each other?
Well, it was just natural. So intellectual capital staffs, IT people, mostly for state government, higher ed, that type of thing. So we find a great candidate, and that takes a while, right? Especially an IT candidate, they're rare.
Yeah.
And then you place them in a culture that's not healthy, and then they bounce, right? It can be super frustrating for us and our client. So we, about 8 years ago, we launched kind of a value add where we would come in and train and make sure that your soil of your culture was very healthy.
Okay.
So that we could plant someone there and then they could stay. And that grew into its own business because I had, intellectual capital clients, and then they told people and they told their spouses, and then it just gradually grew into something else. And instead of it being just a value add, now I've become a culture consultant where I can come in and test through assessments and find out where are you at? Where's your baseline? And then we can build a program.
I'm not looking for the actual test, but how do you assess a culture environment? Where do you start with that?
There's 2 assessments that I can use. But a lot of it is looking around,
Okay.
right? Noticing are their values posted.
Okay.
When you ask someone, and what's your mission statement? Can they recall what the mission statement is? There's some signs, I think. I was working with a group in DC, and they had posted their values on the wall, and one of the values said, "We value people." But when I worked with their senior team, they talked over one another.
Okay.
And they talked down to one another. So I reminded them that on your wall is posted this, and there's a disconnect in the way that what you say and what you're doing.
There was an era where it was highly visible in corporations and industries to post their values on the wall. It was during the total quality movement. Shortly after that, there were other types of quality movement. And you saw that. I don't see that as much now.
I wonder why.
I wonder. I
Yeah.
just thought about it when you talked about it.
I wonder why. I advise people to post them.
Yeah.
At the chamber, you notice that
Yeah.
they're posted.
Yeah.
I just think it's important to post them. Again, it takes intentional thought by the company to name their values and make sure that they're aligned with the people that they're hiring.
Now we just completed building a new building. So a lot of the internal branding of that building incorporates all of our values in that. So it's highly visible there. But it wasn't. I don't think it was from the perspective of me saying it was just part of our culture to make sure it became there. But in this building, I don't know. I haven't seen those values posted, but definitely some of the new buildings that we're building, we're making it a part of our internal branding.
Values are internal; they're not external. And that's something else to help businesses understand. It's really about how you treat people, not how you treat your clients.
Okay.
Because your clients are not paying attention to that, but your employees
The
are.
employees are. Both, we talked about 2008, and I talked to once the CEO of Tractor Supply Company, and he talks about the upside down pyramid, and where the most important people in their organization were their employees, were the team members. And if they treat their team members exceptionally well, they believe the team members would treat their customers very well. If they treat the customers very well, then the company will make money. So they have this upside down pyramid. I think Home Depot has a similar philosophy about team members and treating people. And so I do see that as being a really critical part of any organizational success is people.
Yeah, I also feel like treating your vendors well is important, and having your employees see you treat your vendors well, and not constantly live in frustration because they're seeing that as well. Some people treat their employees really good and treat their customers bad.
Yeah.
So I do believe that it's a three-pronged chair around engagement and around culture. You have to treat them all with dignity.
I agree. In 2005, you were recognized globally as an Enterprising Woman of the Year for your work with HPA and ICAP. How do you feel? How did that feel, and what message do you hope it sends to other women and business leaders?
I won that award when I was 57 years old.
Okay.
And so my hope is that it sends to women that it's never too late to start over. And it's never too late to start, period.
Yeah.
And that your success doesn't always come at the beginning of your career. Sometimes it comes after some clunkiness.
Yeah.
Right. And so I hope that it inspires people to keep growing and to keep learning.
Okay.
But it is just an award, and I feel like the definition.
It's a little more than a award.
Yeah. I do feel like the definition of success is: are you living your life
authentically?
Authentically.
Yeah.
And do you lay down at night proud of yourself about the way that you're showing up?
Yeah, I think that's even more important.
Mm-hmm.
Your community involvement runs deep. We talked about the Greenville Chamber to mentoring young professionals. How do these engagements influence your leadership at ICAP and vice versa?
I love the fact that you mentioned about having a young mentor.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the ways that it influences me. As I am mentoring people, I'm learning just as much about them as I'm giving them. And so I'm staying close to them to understand kind of their strengths and their gaps and what they're seeing and what they don't see and what they're disconnected with. I think that I bring that back as a business owner.
Excellent.
It's informing the way that I am strategizing for the future of my business based on that. Thinking about going away from paper, for instance. going to apps, creating outlines that they, scan and get a QR code, and you're not handing out a handout instead. So it's informing and it's changing me and it's growing me at the same time.
And it's in a good way, especially when you can embrace it. My youngest son used to frustrate my wife and I so much because he did everything on his cell phone and his iPad, everything. So we would buy school supplies and Brandon, where are your books, and et cetera. But his learning style, and he excelled academically, but his learning style was totally different than ours
Yes.
and what we were comfortable with. So we had to get out of our comfort zone to really appreciate that change in environment as well, change in culture.
Yeah. One of the things that through pace setters that I ask, I said, hey, would you guys like to do a book study? And they're like, no, but we'd love to do an article study or a podcast study.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a different way of thinking about the same things.
Same thing, yes. And this brings us to a question. When you think about ICAP's future, how do you see the company building to adapt to new tech, such like AI, shifting talent landscape, and evolving client needs?
Well, we're dogged about AI.
Okay.
I believe it is, we're on the beginning cusp of it. I actually believe, and my husband does as well, that AI will produce jobs, not take away jobs.
Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I think it will produce jobs because we're already seeing it. We're already seeing the need to hire developers that understand AI. We're already seeing it not take away jobs, but reduce the redundancy and the busy work maybe that you had before and help you to think better. But you still have to know how to ask great questions. There's so many apps now to use. I created a presentation for somebody and wrote my own music in like 1 minute.
Wow.
So I think it's going to add to our ability to lead businesses and to lead our communities.
I actually had analysis done that looked at the telephone, the dial telephone, and the mobile telephone, and looked at how many jobs were lost as a result of the mobile telephone coming into fruition. And what it showed is that the new telephone, there were probably 4 times as many jobs created as were actually lost.
I'm not surprised.
And it talked about the different types of jobs that were created from this new technology. So oftentimes we think about technology impacting jobs, but it also creates all types of opportunities for us.
It really does.
And that's the reason certification and other types of credentialing are so important.
It really does. And I think we're going to be able to tell companies in the next 2 or 3 years who are not using AI.
Yeah.
Because those of us that are using it, I think we're going to outpace the other companies that are not.
So this is a question that I ask, and oftentimes it's difficult for some to answer, and it's easy for some to answer. If you weren't in leadership, what career do you think you might be exploring today?
Well, you're going to laugh when I tell you this. It would be a college professor or a
Okay.
career counselor.
Okay.
And
None of that surprised me.
my
Neither
husband
one of
laughed.
those
He's like, you already do both of those just in different
Exactly.
ways,
So-
right? I just love the building of people and the development of people. I love the college setting because I believe that people pay to go there. And so typically they're more engaged in their learning, say, than maybe middle school, which is where I've taught before.
Excellent. So I'd like to talk about leading below the line. That's the name of this podcast. And it's a term I heard from one of my previous institutions, the president of the university, talked a lot about below the line. And it was in conflict management oftentimes. And what I mean is that what's beneath the surface. You have conversations, you have encounter with people, you have encounter in leadership, and you think that you're making progress, but you haven't really made progress unless you understand what's happening below the line. And oftentimes those are the things that impede people from being able to see things differently. So can you talk about a bit about what others don't see when they lead, and why it's important to know what's going on with your people?
Well, only 43% of Americans are self-aware. So I think that's an impediment when people lead is they're not self-aware enough.
Yeah.
Are you an NFL fan?
Yeah.
Okay, so am I. I just finished watching The Kingdom with
Okay.
Andy Reid. There was an episode where he posted a little note on his desk that said, "Don't judge."
Okay.
And so I think that is impeding leaders, is that they come to some conversations with a judgmental spirit instead of a spirit of curiosity. And I think it's because they're not self-aware. They're not understanding how they show up. And so that's one of my big areas in coaching, is to try to change mindsets. Instead of judgment, curiosity, replace it with that. Good listening skills, asking great questions. I think that helps us to be a better leader, but only when we become self-aware about how we're showing up, how someone is experiencing us.
So that was a period of time when people were talking about storytelling and understanding the stories of your colleagues and your, so you can appreciate how they think about things. I think that was an effort of trying to get below the line to understand how people come to challenges and issues, the anxiety or insecurities they may feel that keep them from moving in a certain direction. What do you think about how do you make a connection there?
I do. I think it's both and.
Okay.
I think you can't understand someone's story unless you're really curious. I believe that people will pick up your motivation if you're only listening to get them to follow you or to get them to do what you want them to do. I don't think is as effective.
Okay.
So I still believe that it comes back to being self-aware about your motivations and becoming a curious by nature person, and helps you to embrace their stories and listen to their stories and care about their humanness.
Thank you. So I have one final question. Do you have a hero?
I do.
Tell me about it.
Edna, my grandmother.
Okay.
Sweet Edna. Now, on the world standards, she probably wouldn't be anyone's hero.
Okay.
She was mine. And I feel like that I've tried to emulate some of her values. She was consistent.
Okay.
Every time I came home from school, there was sugar biscuits on my table.
Wow.
And she met me, and she wasn't in a hurry, and she was willing to sit and listen. So that consistency is something I want to emulate with my family. I want my girls, when they call me, I want to be available for them. I want to show up consistently. She was also dependable. There was never a time in my life that I ever worried about her picking me up. And I think dependability for a leader is so important. My employees need to know that they're always going to get a paycheck,
Okay.
that I am a dependable person, that I keep my word, that when I leave a meeting and tell them I'll take care of that I take care of it, that they don't have to remind me 4 times in order for me to take care of it. And presence.
Yeah.
She was just so present with us. And again, she didn't have a job. She didn't have anywhere to be, but it made an impression on me as a human of how I felt important to her. And so I hope to be that to my employees. I have 2 daughters, to my daughter, to my husband, my aging parents. I want to be dependable, consistent with them as well. So, Edna, she's still showing up in my life.
Great, great. That's powerful, powerful. Well, Traci, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
your time. I have a saying that I quote, and I'm going to give this to you before you leave, is a cup that I have on the outside of the cup. My mother told me something. She said, Benny, you need to live life with an empty cup.
Oh.
There should always be room in your cup to receive input from others. So you don't have to drink it all, but you have to have the humility to sit and listen. You could pour part of it out when they leave, but I need you to have the humility to do. You have filled my cup today, and hopefully you will fill listening to you will fill the cup of so many of our listeners. So thank you so very much for filling our cup and for sharing your story and sharing story about leadership and people.
I love that. I would have loved your mother too.
Yeah.
That sounds wonderful.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much for having
I
me.
think I would have loved Edna as well.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The Below the Line podcast is brought to you by the University of South Carolina Upstate. Look for our monthly write-up in Greenville Business Magazine, and for more information, go to uscupstate.edu.